I had a really, really good friend that lived just up the road from me when I was a kid. Terry was his name, and I lived out in the country. I mean, outside of O'Larry, and O'Larry's not a very big place, and I was probably 10 minutes outside of O'Larry. So I didn't have a whole lot of friends around when I was growing up, and this Terry kid is a few years younger than me, but he just lived probably a half mile up the road. So we did pretty much everything together when we were kids, and shot a lot of squirrels and did a lot of boy stuff like that. But this one day, well, we used to pick a lot of bottles actually. Back in the day, I don't know, we didn't have a whole lot of ways to get money when we were little kids, and there was always on the back roads people pitching out beer bottles, pitching out pop bottles. So we used to collect pop bottles, and we'd bike or walk into a Larry and rent Nintendo games, and that was what we did on the weekends. And it's kind of funny actually, the video store that we used to rent the games from used to be, it was Thompson's feed mill and like movie rental place. Like, it sounds like something out of a movie. Literally, they made cattle feed, and in the front office rented movies and Nintendo games. So we'd go in there and rent video games with whatever pop bottle money we found. But I remember one day we were walking down the road, and both of us on the same side or whatever, just kind of scanning the ditches for bottles, and we both noticed this thing up a little ways up ahead on the top of the ditch. And I assumed it was a Sears catalog or something. I think he probably thought the same, and we were walking and walking and getting closer and closer, and then at the exact same moment we stopped and looked at each other and just went, "Playboy!" And it was a Playboy somebody had pitched out of the window of their car, and it was in the ditch. Anyway, we snatched that up, straight back to the tree fort, and we had a tree fort back behind his place that you had to walk through. It was in the middle of a cow pasture, the woods in a cow pasture, but you had to walk through like a swamp, and it was just a chore just to get back there. But anyway, we had this old rickety tree fort. It was just like, I don't even know if you'd call it plywood. It was just cheap wood up in a tree, and the Playboy went up in there, and we'd go back from time to time, and you know, it was always like the big thing, like, because we were pretty young, you'd be on the school bus or whatever, and you'd be like, "Yeah, boys, you know, we got a Playboy back at the tree fort," and everybody wanted to come over and see it, and it was damp and musty back there. So, I mean, it wasn't back there very long before it was just like basically 4 pages that you could separate because it was all so wet. And I just remember that not being too old, I don't know how old we would have been, probably 11 or 12 or something like that, but every once in a while somebody would come back and they'd have like a menthol cigarette, and you'd go up there and you'd be in the tree fort, and somebody would whip out the Playboy and somebody would whip out a menthol cigarette, and then you'd have to sit in there for a half an hour before you had your legs back under you enough that you could climb down out of the tree, because everybody was so lightheaded from the cigarettes. But yeah, I remember finding that Playboy and thinking that was something pretty special anyway. Yeah, it was a total jackpot. Like, first time I ever saw a boob in my life, right? I'm just walking down the road, just a normal day, and boom, there's a Playboy in the ditch.